I'm Kaden Love.
And I'm Sima Love, his wife.
And we are Love and Lore, taking dark fantasy, light fantasy, and everything in between. So, today we are going to just start off with talking about a challenge that we're doing with each other. And for all you couples out there, maybe this is something you can do too. Like we say often, I like darker fantasy, she likes lighter fantasy, especially those with romance in them.
Yeah.
So what we decide to do is we decide to pick a book for each other that is very much in our own genre that the other person would never read without having such a challenge.
Yes.
So we both picked out books for each other to read, and we will get to those soon, and we'll do another video where we kind of talk about if we liked it, not, but we're both committed to finishing them, and whether or not we continue the series, that is up to the reader.
Yeah. So, the book that I decided to give Kaden to read is The Cruel Prince. He only has to read the first book, but I do think that if he enjoys it enough, he is welcome to read the other two. The reason why I gave you this one is actually because it has a lot of hype and a lot of people really love it. For me, it was kind of like a 4-star book, and I'm not sure why it didn't really hit for me, but it had a lot of political intrigue, struggle for power, and not a lot of romance, which is partially why I chose it, because Kaden doesn't like... Do you care for romance in your books?
When it's done well. I don't like it to be the main thing. I am not a fan of just pure romance, except for a few exceptions. But I think when it's done well, it can be very interesting.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And the book I chose from her is from the Lord of Grimdark, Joe Abercrombie. So I don't think Sima would read any book that is called Grimdark unless given to her in this thing. If you've seen our previous video where we talk about romance in books and she decides that she's going to have to read A Little Hatred, I figured she's got to start off early, and she might just end up reading A Little Hatred onward, or just A Little Hatred on its own, but I think she needs to start at the beginning. So my book is going to be The Blade itself. To be fair, this is my least favorite of Abercrombie's works. I don't think it's bad at all. It's just so much more of a setting up plot and building this world. And I think a lot of people just look at Joe Abercrombie's books from what they've heard and think it's just hard, rough action. But that's not what it is. There's definitely good political intrigue. Something interesting about it is that the magic system isn't as explained as like in Sanderson's ones. It's just there. And the reason I think you will like this book, this actually introduces one of my favorite characters in fantasy, that being Samdan Glokta, who is a cynical, humorous, gross character that you just learn to love. I think he is so interesting, very brilliant, and this gives you a great introduction to him. So if you don't gain anything from this, I want you to at least see that. He's like Tyrion Lannister, but even he's a bad person on its own. Tyrion's kind of guessing. Glokta's a bad person, but does he become better? We'll see what happens later on.
Yeah, I'm actually really curious as to what my reaction will be, because I don't think that my taste in books is very sophisticated. I don't like it when something sad happens. I don't like it when the characters are not driven by desire to be a good person, when they're just full on doing bad things. I don't relate. I struggle with it, so I'm really interested if I read a book that is supposed to do these things very well, if I'll actually learn to like these things. So we'll see.
And the interesting things about it is that, yes, one of the big parts about Grimdark is that antagonists and protagonists are all typically morally gray. There's no good and evil a lot of times, and I think that that's one of the things that he does well, is that, there are a lot of times where he focuses on two different people on different sides of wars, and, you kind of sympathize with one and the other, and you see everyone's paths. And I honestly don't think The Blade itself is a very sad book. Maybe there's sad moments in later books, but one of the great things that Abercrombie does well, especially with Glokta, is the humor. This is a dark book, great fantasy, but there are times that you might laugh out loud, because it's just he's a very great writer, and I think the main power from his books are the characters. You will see very well written characters here. Well, if you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe, comment if you've done any challenges like this with a friend, significant other. We're interested to know. Or if you're going to do a challenge like this because of it.